Let's get started with the first panel, and we'll talk about deep tech. So where will Europe's next breakthrough actually come from? We noticed that deep tech investment is really the engine behind Europe's next wave of innovation. There's a few hubs across Europe where there's a lot going on. And this panel brings together the investors deciding where that capital flows. And we'll really talk about that in much detail. So welcome on stage, Alexander from Plug and Play moderating this panel. Then we have Johannes Stress, founding partner at UTV V, and Matthieu de Chantérac, general partner at Shift for Good. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you for that intro, Sina, and really nice to talk with Matthieu and also Johannes about deep tech and where the next breakthrough research will be in Europe. And to give a quick introduction of the panel participants, we have Johannes here with us from UTV, an early stage fund investing into pre-seed and seed startups, mostly in university spinouts in Europe. And then we also have Matthieu de Chantérac with us, co-founder and managing partner at Shift for Good. VC fund focused on the decarbonization in the transportation sector with over 220 million in assets under management. And also one of their portfolio startups, Compredict, is right across the stage on the other side. So really nice to talk to the both of you about this topic. And we want to dive right into the topic and talk about Europe's structural advantage, because we often hear the common narrative that research is quite good in Europe, but when it then comes to commercialization and further scaling, the US is far ahead of us. And Europe is just about regulating. So first question, to maybe starting with you, Johannes. Where is the real structural advantage that we have in Europe, and what is the basis that we can build on for future unicorns in the deep tech sector?
Yeah, first of all, Alexander, thank you very much for inviting. Very happy to be on the panel today. We think that Europe has really strong science, strong technologies, lots of strong universities. I mean, in Germany, we have for sure the Munich ecosystem with also lots of startups, but there's also, you find a strong professor with every university in Germany. For example, there's a strong quantum computing cell in Siegen. There's a great professor for robotics in Darmstadt. And if you look at the European level, there's lots of strong hubs. ETH Zurich developed strongly, especially for AI and robotics. The Paris ecosystem is really interesting. Oxford, London, Cambridge, the Nordics also for energy. So there's a lot going on, as you said. And on the other side, if you compare it to the US, there's way less successful startups and so on. So I think the basis is great. What's also great is that we have lots of great industry corporates in manifold industries. I mean, Plug and Play is a hub for automotive and mobility, but there's also lots of other interesting industries. And this is really needed to support startups early on. But we still need, I would say, 10 times more startup activities in Germany and Europe, like 10 times more like Munich and ETH Zurich. The startup factories in Germany is a good first start, but we need much more and better quality. And on the other side, what will really help the startups would also be 10 times more venture clienting from corporates. So we work a lot with corporates, and I think there's really a vast potential to combine innovation of startups and the internal activities. I mean, 20 years ago, innovation was mostly done out of the corporate. Nowadays, it's really shifted. You have to look at startups and to have that much more structured and do much more venture clienting that would really help the startup ecosystem.
Yeah. And then over to you, Matthieu. You have a big corporate LP base also with your fund. Yeah. What do you see as a structural advantage in Europe, and also maybe going a bit more into detail about the industrial backbone that we have in Europe and the role that these players take?
Yeah, sure. So the regulation you mentioned, Many will say that regulation is too heavy in Europe. Actually, for good, we back companies where regulation, we don't see it as a constraint, but as something that is embedded in the products. So I would argue that Europe is the only region where compliance, trust is embedded from the start and by design by many startups who want to deploy across this market. So that's in fact not necessarily a disadvantage, but could be turned into an advantage. And if you look at the AI Act, sector-specific standards, data sovereignty requirements, that may look like friction from the outside, but for many industrial buyers in automotive, energy, healthcare, those are purchasing criteria. So if in Europe our startups are able to tackle that by design from the start, they can create an advantage. And look, China has a speed and scale, and but also growing deficit of trust for market exports, IP concerns, geopolitical exposure. The US deep tech is super strong, but they are looking increasingly inward facing. In Europe, I think we can really play our game and lead, because from the start we can be the one that embed in our product and service features the trust, the compliance aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, no, understood. Like what you said is research institutes we have in Europe. There's a lot of great research coming out. We also have the industry to then help the startups to commercialize it. So let's dive a bit deeper into the sectors that we see, that also you are investing in when it comes to deep tech. Maybe starting with you, Johannes. What is the current thesis at UTV? What are the topics you're most interested in as an investor, and where you're currently deploying the money?
Yeah. First of all, we are a broad deep tech investor. We see around 3,000 to 4,000 startups annually in Europe. We invest across all industries and technologies, you can say, like AI, compute, robotics, space tech, clean tech, and so on. And so we have theses in all these different fields. Maybe to touch one area that's also really out of interest for this group over here with your mobility focus. We like, for example, if you look at AI startups, we like startups that tackle unstructured data. For example, we are invested into Certivity together with also you guys. They do product compliance for automotive. They collect unstructured data and help the engineer to have a more efficient product development roadmap, because before the engineer is looking at the different ISO norms and guidelines and is looking for the right frames for his development tasks, and Certivity is automating that. So they collect lots of different data, put it together, and typically if you develop a new product in automotive, you have to also bring it to the market in 200 countries, so there's lots of regulation which is continuously changed via over the product life cycle, and this is what they do. Or another example is Edmund AI. That's an investment out of our new fund. They also collect unstructured data in production. So they help you, if your production line breaks down, that you are up and running as quick as possible. They don't do predictive maintenance. They don't do single machines. They do production lines. And in automotive, you can say every hour breakdown costs like 2 million euro. And with a really well-established production line, you have let's say 1,000 sensors, 500 actuators, robotics included, automation technologies, different PLCs, and so on. And then it breaks down, and then you start looking. And they just help these teams to be up and running as quick as possible. And they also collect unstructured data from these different sources. So that's one thesis, for example.
And then over to you, Matthieu. What are you currently looking at in the...
Yeah, the thesis is quite broad, but if I had to pick one topic, I would say probably physical AI for industrial automation. I'm not thinking here about the humanoid robot hype. I'm thinking about the software and control layer that allows machines, vehicles, warehouses, ports, factories to operate safely and autonomously in real-world environments. So this is really an area where we believe a lot is currently happening and will for quite some time. And by the way, that's also interesting for players, legacy players from the automotive industry, because they have a lot of skills and assets to operate in this field. With the excellence in manufacturing that we have in Europe, and even more maybe in this region, thinking about the fact of using this to assemble, manufacture other assets, like we see that more and more, of course, automotive players going into the assembly of drones and or robots. So this is an area which we think is very promising, and where Europe can not just can lead, in fact, and not be a follower, because we have the industrial customers, we have the engineering talent, we have the ability to comply with the regulation. We have a lot of assets. If we can mobilize fast enough the capital, and if the industrial customers are also fast enough to deploy, I think Europe could win in that space.
I mean, both of you mentioned that the startups in that space, be it manufacturing, be it physical AI, they're kind of dependent on also industry customers to integrate their technology in a quick way, so you don't have super long sales cycle. Do you also see a risk that maybe these bigger companies are not fast enough to integrate startup technologies into their environment and into their systems?
If I take it first, I think it's. I mean, I've invested in many companies whose technology had to be embedded into series production vehicles. It's tough, and really, it tends to be tougher and tougher in Europe. It takes many years. With technologies that are applying in the manufacturing environment, I see many startups that have a use case with an ROI which is less than 12 months. Much easier for factory decision makers or vice president of supply chain manufacturing to decide to go, because usually the payback is much faster.
Yeah, I think this is true for all industries, not only automotive or mobility. If you go to energy or whatever, it's the same. And as you mentioned, Matthieu, if you are a startup, if you're a startup out of university or have a great technology, you have to understand if you really solve a problem out there in the market. Because in the end, you have to sell to a customer and you have to build a product. And if you only deliver an incremental improvement, then a large corporate will not change its processes, as you just described. So you have to have a technology leap, and this is really important. And then you have to have a network that helps you to get into these corporates and find the right people. If you're robotic startups and want to work with an automotive OEM, you have to have someone helping you to find the right expert in that organization. So that's really important. And on the corporate side, we see everything. I mean, we see super slow corporates where nothing happens, like, let's say, black holes. But we also see the other end. We see also super constructive and helpful corporates. So I talked to a board member of a construction company from Munich beginning of this week. One of our portfolio companies is a customer, and he called me and said, "Hey, your startup is too slow. What can we do that they speed up?" And I called the founder, and he told me, "Yeah, we agreed on a plan. They gave us a plan with their milestones, and that's what we are targeting. If they want to be faster, we are happy to go for. They should adapt the plan and we will deliver." So I called the board member again and told him, "Hey, you have to adapt your plan that they understand that you want to be quicker." And then this also builds trust between the corporate and the startup. If you have this communication, so you also see these great examples where the corporate even pushes for faster deployment with the startup. And we love to work with corporates that really are hands-on, are looking for new innovation, and where you have a quick route into their organization with the right expert. I mean, in the end, I don't know if the technology of that startup fits into the process landscape of the customer, but at least we can guarantee that we show an interesting technology where it's worth that an expert takes a 30 minutes call and then they can take it from there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Then let's go a bit further. So we've heard about, we have to research, industry support is very important. But what is missing in Europe to really scale these early stage startups to global leaders? So we see, for example, that a significant amount of late stage funding especially is delivered in or deployed into US startups. So a question to both of you. So how do we break this, let's call it valley of death in the scale up phase and scale these European startups to global leaders? What is missing and how can we, or better say, how can we achieve that?
Yeah, it's true that I think we have 45% of deep tech startups in Europe at the global scale and 17% of funding. So yes, that's a real gap, that's the truth, but there is also a kind of coalition gap. I think we need three things. We need larger specialized funds that are able to put 10 to 30 million euro checks and understand industrial timelines. Second, we need so corporates with faster industrial procurement processes when working with startups. I mean, a startup can survive a technology challenge of several months, but they often can't survive a 24 months of unpaid pilot cycle. So this is also some responsibility on the corporate side, and when we support our portfolio startups for them to work with corporates, we help them define clear milestones and identify if there is an identified business owner, identified procurement, paid pilots, all the conditions are there, a road from pilot to deployment. We say, okay, you can go there, it's safe. We have mapped it. So second thing is faster industrial procurement, and the third thing I would say is, but you mentioned it, is growth funds for later stage funding. We need more across Europe, and there are some initiatives at the European Innovation Fund level, but we need that and not wait for a US leader to do that investment and flip over European companies to the US.
Yeah, maybe to add to this, fully agree with these points. We talked a lot about pre-seed, seed, early stage investments so far. If you look at scale-ups, besides your points that you mentioned, I think another interesting thing is grants. So there's really large European grants for photonics, semiconductor, and so on, like for breakthrough technologies that support European sovereignty. If you are a scale-up, that's defense also, yeah, that's really the ones you also should go for. For example, we are invested into Quantum Diamonds. They announced like half a year ago that they get 150 million out of a European chip program. These are the large areas you should also go for.
Yeah, thank you. So to close the panel, I would like to ask you one question, and please answer it in like one sentence, so a very quick answer. If you would have to pick one deep tech vertical, in which one will we see a European deep tech startup reaching a 100 billion valuation?
I think I said, I will repeat, physical AI for industrial automation.
Yeah, so I would first start with an area where I don't see it because it's very hyped at the moment. So defense is really hyped. Helsing has a 12 billion valuation. Maybe they aim for 18 right now. I mean, the market valuation of Rheinmetall is 45 billion. So how do you want to build a startup 100 billion plus? I think that would be difficult. I would say, if you look at, we touched a lot physical AI, robotics, and so on. I think physical AI is really hyped at the moment. Robotics is hyped. Also, AI is an enabler for scaling robotic applications. We also have a strong industry backbone in that field. So I could imagine so far lots of technologies are somehow closed by larger players. If you look at Siemens or SAP as similar ones, and I could imagine that there is a chance for someone breaking up these closed shops and building like a larger system provider, opening up also humanoid robotics and so on, backed by strong European corporate players. There could be an area where there's possible.
All right, thanks a lot for that answer. And maybe that $100 billion startup is already around us and you can try to find it. And with that, thanks a lot, both of you, for joining the panel, and see you around and later on.